it's telling me that we're live.
Yep, watch live. Yes, that's right. Yeah, I probably need to renew it, don't I? Refresh it. Let's see.
So we've got no viewers, but that's okay. They'll always
They'll catch up.
they always catch up. You and I here. Carl's missing in action.
Hope he's all right.
Carl's sister, he won't mind me telling people this, Carl's sister graduated university with a law degree.
Oh, wow. Well, that is worth celebrating. Absolutely.
So...
Well done, her.
Yes. So they are celebrating. I think they had the graduation today, Simon. So they're celebrating today. So that's always cool.
In town celebrating. Fantastic. Yeah.
Because as you know, it's 6:37 p.m. over here, and 5:37 a.m.
5:37 for me.
Hey, look, I appreciate you jumping out of bed early the second week in a row to be with the show, mate. I appreciate it, and we got some good feedback from last week's show. I think it's always interesting if the name of Fleetwood Mac comes up in a conversation, because you know, a lot of people know the famous version of the band, don't they?
Yeah, but yes, you're right. The Peter Green version is kind of, because it was so short and got pushed into the sort of background, really. And of course, those crucial 10 years between, a bit less than that, but the late 70s, when the sort of famous incarnation of Fleetwood Mac kind of got themselves together and made Fleetwood Mac and Rumours.
Yeah.
There's a sort of gap there, isn't there, when nothing happened. Well, they carried on though, didn't they, with Bob Welsh and people like that playing guitar and things. But
yeah, there's an interview with Bob Welch on YouTube, and they're interviewing him. I think we discussed it last week, but I know that Carl and I have certainly mentioned it in previous shows, where Welch is talking about how you had to be very reverent if you used the name Peter Green, and it's almost as if people said he was a saint. And when he met Peter Green, he's sitting there and he's looking at Peter Green and going, "You've got some cheese in your hair."
As every saint would have.
And he's turning around saying, you can't be that. He's got cheese. Yeah. But we all, anyway.
Well,
so last week we talked about how Peter sort of started the band, didn't we?
Yeah.
His motivation. Right. I did a bit of research after the show, Simon. I didn't actually realise how many bands he was in, semi-pro bands, before he became a professional musician. So you're right, and he was a bass player. He started off playing bass. So remember, we've made that connection before in the past about bass players and how important or interesting they are as musicians.
Indeed, and I think that kind of understanding of the rhythm section, and that kind of means that you're kind of, you're interested in collaboration. You're interested in, as we can see, brings in other musicians, wants to not just be a blues band, which they could have done, realizing, I think, probably that, you can get away with that for a couple of albums, but then you've got to start expanding your horizons out and doing some other stuff, and introducing new and different experiences into that. And I think that bringing, other guitar, I can't think of any other band then had 3 guitar players. Can you?
No, certainly 2, but not 3.
Even the Grateful Dead had 2, didn't they? Bob Weir and Jerry Garcia. Didn't have anybody else, did they? No. So, that of itself is an interesting, to think that you could have 3 different, 3 guitarists, 3 people playing different things within a band context, the same instrument. It's quite, I think it's quite revolutionary in many ways, And I noticed that they all kind of, Jeremy Spencer did the kind of slide thing, and was interested in Elmore James and all of that. And that's very clearly where his style comes from. Whereas Danny Kirwan, his style is different to that. He was interested in kind of Django Reinhardt and kind of jazz and things like that, and kind of, big band stuff, and taking his influences from other places rather than just straight blues.
Yeah, how old was he when he was playing in that band? Was it Boiler House, like 14 or 15?
18, I think, or by the time he joined Fleetwood Mac when he was 18.
Yeah, 18.
So, he'd obviously been playing in Boiler House for a while, and made a bit of a stir in South London, I think. And he persuaded Mike Vernon to go and see him and, watch them rehearse, kind of thing. And then Vernon recommended him to Peter Green, because he was kind of impressed by his style, because it wasn't just a straightforward, blues style. As I say, it was kind of had that other big band 20 stuff in it that interested him, and that obviously is a completely different angle to Jeremy Spencer, bringing that Elmore James thing, and then a different thing to Peter Green, bringing more of, I don't know, the Kings or whatever to to it. So, you can see that he's got this idea, or I think he has this idea of, well, you're doing one style, I'm doing another style, and he's doing another style. Well, that's enough. We can have 3 guitarists in the band, and we can do, that still is going to work because of the different styles of what people play. And I think that's really interesting. That you've got that kind of, as I say, that kind of collaborative thing of saying, what can we do to expand our sound? What can we do to to make things different?
I would say the prime mover in that, though, would have been Vernon. Vernon would have clearly bought Danny and said to the guys, look, Danny, listen to this guy. He's going to offer you an opportunity to expand your sound. And I'm sure, Peter, being the personality that we've read about, would have just listened to it and agreed and thought, yeah, that was a good idea. I don't think Peter would have been the prime mover behind saying that we're going to do this, we're going to do that.
Oh, I don't know. I think he was. I think, I think he wanted to move Fleetwood Mac away from pure blues. And he was looking for a new musical collaborator to do it, which is, obviously Vernon was on the lookout on his behalf, I think. And from what I've read, my understanding is that is true, And obviously, he came across Danny Kirwan, and you go, oh, right, okay, yes, I think that might work. I think that that certainly, he kind of had a different style, and also he sang as well. Let's not underestimate the the world of the vocal harmony kind of thing, but bringing that extra dimension, so not only can you play the guitar, but you can sing as well.
And 3 singers.
But I think that that always helps, doesn't it? 3 guitar players, 3 singers is an interesting. I don't know who did he also. I don't know if he also plays piano, but maybe not. But certainly, bringing that different thing to Fleetwood Mac, I think really enhanced their stuff. And of course, he contributed the second guitar part on Albatross.
Yeah,
I think that was kind of his first thing, was to.
I was quite surprised actually last week when I was doing some research. For a long time on Spotify, Then Play On wasn't on digital, but Then Play On, is now on Spotify. So
yeah. Then Play On from
which is pretty good. So I spent the last couple of days, listening to while I was driving around, and I just yeah. It's a phenomenal album. It's a shame that it ended there.
Yeah, and then play on. Well, only for a bit. They're quite. What struck me about it is, they've got they're quite because of literate, aren't they? As a band, I mean, then play on is obviously Shakespeare, and Albatross and their compilation on Pious Bird of Good Omen is all Coleridge, isn't it? Samuel Taylor Coleridge, the Rime of the Ancient Mariner and stuff like that. So they obviously took their literary sources reasonably seriously, dug stuff out and like that. I like that.
I like what Carl said last week. He was talking about he was painting a picture for us of some desert landscape when he listens to oh gosh, what was it? I'm not coming your way. Close my fighting for Madge. So you underway, and I couldn't help but get rid of that image every time I was listening to that album.
Yes, that's interesting, that, isn't it? Yeah.
Just hold on. It's not coming your way, because that's Danny's singing that. Hold on. Close my eyes. But my favourite song on that album is Fighting for Madge.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
That guitaring, the dual guitaring, Simon.
At the end, yeah.
Phenomenal.
See, that brings. I mean, even then, what are we talking? 68, then kind of thing. That dual guitars like that. Can you think of many other bands that had a kind of dual lead guitar like that? I can't think. Yeah, just trying to think. I mean, interestingly, they went on and played with the Grateful Dead, so there's a similarity there.
Yep.
But I can't think of another band who had two kind of lead guitarists who played. I mean, most other bands, it's much more delineated, that, isn't it? It's much more kind of like lead guitar, rhythm guitar. I suppose the Stones.
You had touches of it with the Stones, but certainly the roles were pretty much set. This guy's the rhythm guitarist and this guy's the lead guitarist, but and they would cross over now and again. But certainly, you're right. That whole album, it's two lead guitars.
Yeah, and not only is it two lead guitars, but playing lead, together, intertwining and all of that, and setting the tone for weaving it, interweaving, and but in a lead guitar way, not in a rhythm guitar way, but yes, and kind of setting the tone for people like Wishbone Ash and Leonard Skinner and all sorts of people like that. I don't know if Leonard Skinner were influenced by Fleetwood Mac, but the Allman Brothers, indeed, yeah, yes. Whipping Post. Do you remember that? I don't know if are you too young to remember that, Andrew? When I used to go to gigs in the early 70s, people would randomly shout out for Whipping Post.
No.
The Allman Brothers song, Whipping Post?
Oh, yeah, I'm very familiar with it.
Yeah, well, so much so that Frank Zappa used to shout out his concerts. So he got his band to learn it. So if people shouted it out, then they
could play it.
Play it, yes.
Oh, my God.
Which is a typical Frank joke, I think. But
I suppose.
But yeah.
I suppose if you're talking about Peter Green, and he walked away from the band, didn't he? He walked away. There's various arguments about whether or not he could see that he was losing it, so he had the courage to walk away and go and do whatever he needed to do. But I think there was something probably a little bit more involved. And again, Carl and you mentioned it last week, but there was this discussion, I think, in the last show about Peter wanting to give his money away, or saying that we should give our money away, and that's famous within Fleetwood Mac fans. That's what he certainly wanted to do. But I think that's probably what pushed him. The band turned around and said, "We're not giving nothing away, Pete."
No, I think that's right. I think the others were much less, more interested in earning something out of what they did rather than rather than give it away. I think it's also that ties into the very idealistic kind of hippie late 60s thing, doesn't it, as well? That, you know, that kind of, you know, free living, communal living, kind of all that kind of experimental stuff from the late 60s. It does kind of tie in with that in a broader cultural context of that
but
kind
I
of
think
thing.
with Peter, though, it's certainly a product. It was more realistic in Peter's mind, wasn't it, because of the famous Munich incident?
Indeed, yes. Probably the latest in. Yeah, I'd be interested to know. I mean, I don't know whether he saw his own mind. Although interested to call the name of your band after your rhythm section, not often. To kind of, he bequeathed it to them, didn't he? As a kind of, you know, he said, you know, I'm going to name the band after you guys so that you can carry it on when I'm not doing it, kind of thing.
And that was a good point. That was a good point you made.
Yeah.
You made that last week, and I never thought about that. You know, it was like, so, you know,
yeah. What other bands are named after their rhythm sections?
You know, Peter had this already worked out. You know, I'm going to be in this band for a couple of years. I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to, you know, set it up, leave these guys, and walk away and go and do something else. And he certainly did.
Indeed, yeah, you know, set them up and you know, see what they can make of it, kind of thing, which I think is really interesting. I think that and having that kind of vision of not want to be tied into a single band as well. So yeah, I mean, if you think about it, they started off as Peter Green's Fleetwood Mac, didn't they?
Yep.
And they dropped the Peter Green bit and kept the Fleetwood Mac bit, which is, you know, most other bands like that with a clear leader like that have that person's name as the sort of tagline, don't they? You know, on everything they do, and you would keep that, wouldn't you? You know, you would think you'd keep that if he was the major guy, but he obviously wasn't interested in that particularly.
Yeah, I've read Martin Clemon's book on Peter Green a few times, and you know, we're friends with Martin on Facebook, and
right.
a few people have asked him to reproduce, you know, or reissue the book, or update the book, give us you know, a second edition. But what's interesting in that book, again, it reinforces everything that we know, Simon, now about the delicate personality that Peter had, and Danny.
Well, I was going to say that it's blooming frankly, all of them a bit, isn't it? You know, didn't Jeremy? He went off and joined the Children of God or something, didn't he? They all ran away.
I forgot that, you know, after glancing through it again over the last couple of days, that, you know, Danny was 21 when he was starting to lose it in Fleetwood Mac, arguing with them, throwing beer bottles at Peter, arguing over nothing. You know, again, you know, sad.
Yeah, but kind of product of probably sort of money and addiction. If I can make the link between the things, you know, that there's that famous story of Peter Green turning up at his accountant's house with a shotgun, or threatening to shoot him. Where's the bloody money? Well, okay, man, okay, you know. But so I think it sounds like that. And it is interesting that the balance, that kind of balance of kind of artistic minds and things like that all three of them got, you know, their balance thrown off by the drugs, by the LSD, and kind of all three of them went a bit bananas, really, didn't they? In different ways. I mean, you know, I've heard, you know, that you know, different bands, different drugs and things like that, you know, and how it affects people. But yeah, it sounds to me like it's a classic part of that kind of, you know, you've got the mind expanding bit, but you've also got the sort of the side effect, which is the, you know, I mean, in Peter's case, the sort of mental illness, but in the other's case, it kind of mental illness too, really, which, you know, is bound to end in conflict of some kind, you know, and you've talked already about the money conflict, you know, but I guess, you know, the musical conflicts and the, you know, the other stuff, which is, you know, wrapped up in all of that, really. And then, you know, and at 19, 20, 21, how do you know how to get out of it? You know, you haven't got a wise head, have you, at 19, 20?
No.
You've got a young, idealistic, you know, I'm going to rebellious head on, really, at that age.
Hey, Simon, I'm just going to do a shout out before we move on. So, Arvin, thanks for joining us. Soda Pop,
cool.
Bass Hiroshima Nick, thanks for joining us. I think he's been in the last couple of weeks. Who else have we got here with us?
Told, aka Soda Pop.
Yeah, all the usual suspects.
the usual insomniacs. Oh no, actually, they're probably not. They're probably in different parts of the world, rather than.
I want to ask you a question, Simon.
Go on.
And this is going to be a bit of a shout out to Dave, also known as Stafford Studio, who joins
Whereabouts
us.
in the UK is he based?
Heck, I don't know. I can't remember. He did tell me during the show. I'll when you're talking, I'll have a look on my phone and see. But anyway, what's interesting about having a chat with Stafford Studio over the last couple of days, and he's a young guy, and he's listening to all the bands that, you know, our show talks about, and he's influenced by these guys. So that's brilliant. So I asked him, you know, because he's an Englishman, what is it about English cats and British and guitars? And he said something interesting. He said, well, you know, because I listed Clapton, Peter Green, Keith Richards, you know, in my conversation. And he said, probably for that time, the guitar was like an obsessive thing for these guys. These guys probably bordered on some kind of compulsive
disorder kind of thing, obsessive compulsive disorder kind of playing
to
all the
sit
time.
there for hours and play the guitar.
Yes. Yes, I never thought of that. But yeah, I suppose you've got to have some kind of obsessive thing for a guitar to sit there and play it for, you know, days and months and years, haven't you? You know, alongside, as I said, I've said on here before, I think that really the other important thing is that they had things that they could play quite easily. So you had hooks, you know, 3-chord songs, you know, simple songs. I've seen somebody, was it yesterday, or somebody saying about that sort of the death of the last round of guitar virtuosos in the 80s was down to Nirvana. You know, suddenly nobody wanted, you know, big solos were out, and you know, playing simpler songs. I think Nirvana simpler is a point of argument, but you know, but yeah, very much that kind of chords thing, very much so that young kids who are going to pick up a guitar can get into it. You know, they can play a song. And I think let's not underestimate had to be a riff, had to be a song. You know, hey, I know, you know, because that's the thing. If you've got a guitar, somebody's going to say, "Play us a song," then, you know. And as I've said on here before, you know, it's if you're just starting, age 14, it's not going to be Eruption, is it? It's going to be, you know, it's going to be something like Satisfaction, you know, or it's going to be, you know, something reasonably simple. I mean, even something like Smoke on the Water actually is a really simple riff to play. You know, play it right is a different thing, but you know, dan 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 is actually brilliantly simple. You know, it's kind of, and just run up and down, and you can think, oh, I can play that. Yeah, you know, and you don't need to be the world's greatest technical guitar player to play stuff. You know, let's not underestimate. And I think, you know, going back, you know, all these guys are basing their playing. What are they learning? They're learning blues. You know, what is blues? Blues is basically a 3-chord trick.
Yep.
You know, if I can string a few words together and I can play, you know, oh, I got this morning, believe I'll dust my, you know, it's like, it's not that, in its basic form, that basic, you know, it's not that difficult to play, you know. Learning the intricacies of what, you know, what Elmore James did and stuff like that is different. You know, learning the slide guitar parts and all of that, it's obviously more difficult. But you've got a hook straight into it, straight away. You know, you only need 3 chords, and you can play "Dust My Broom," can't you? And
Yeah.
every other blues song in the canon. You know, if you're doing "Boom Boom Boom" or something with, you know, John Lee Hooker, you probably only need 2 chords. You know, and those things. And I think that you shouldn't underestimate why. You know, then you couple that with, you know, that slightly compulsive behavior about, you know, playing the guitar all the time, and you can see why people got really good, you know, in a kind of I would say in a self-taught manner. Yeah. You know, they did things like, you know, Page was a, you know, a great session guitar player. You know, what better way of learning all about the guitar and all about the things it could do than going out and playing
it
10
certainly
hours a
helps,
day?
Simon, if you're pitch perfect like Danny Kirwan and Peter Green were apparently, you know,
they had perfect pitch,
and I
That's
didn't
interesting.
really have a full definition in my mind of what pitch perfect was until, and
You mean perfect pitch? Perfect pitch.
And
yeah.
so they can hear
Yeah.
an A
And know it's an A.
and know it's an A.
Yeah. Oh, and they can also, to expand that, they can also, you know, what all the notes are in a scale.
Yes.
You know, intrinsically, you know, My grandmother had perfect pitch. She was her and her twin sister. Sorry, this is going off a tangent, but her and her twin sister, they were kind of reasonably well known pianists in the 40s and 50s. They used to play together, and she taught piano at the Guildhall School of Music in the 60s. So yeah, but she had perfect pitch. You know, she just knew what it was. Talking of that, a really amazing example of that is, do you know Rick Beato, the YouTuber Rick Beato? Well, his son Dylan. Have you seen the videos he's done with his son?
Yes.
Dylan. Well, yes. Dylan. You know, he says to them, "Well, name me these. You know, what are all the notes here? You know, in this chord. You know, C sharp minus suspended ninth. You know," and he goes, "Oh, da 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 da." You think, bloody hell, fire! You know,
mind-boggling.
My dad was a composer. I can't do that. You know. So I think that is a really interesting point, that, you know, that perfect pitch thing gives you a different perspective on music than, you know, than to coin a phrase, than the hacks like you and me who don't have it, you know, and have to kind of learn it.
When Guns N' Roses, when the album, the second album, Lies, came out, and I remember I had it on cassette, and I worked with a guy who was really good. Now, this is a true story, guys. This is before the internet, and you know, this is before, you know, tab books. And I remember taking it on a tape deck and saying, "Here, Harry, can you tell me what these chords are?" And I remember playing it, and it was lunchtime, and he said it's a G, it's a C, you know, and you know, so I wrote it down, went home, played these chords, and I, my God, you're right. And then, you know, with the advent of these tab apps, you know, a few years ago, I remember, you know, looking for that song, keying it in, and it was just.
And it was those chords. Was Lies the sort of cover versions one they did?
Yeah.
Was that the one that had cover versions on it? Yeah.
No, that was the Spaghetti Incident. Lies was that had like some acoustic songs like Patience,
right?
Know. But you know, that was my first real conscious experience of sitting next to someone listening to a song, writing out the chords,
and they could just do it.
Yeah.
Yes, and I hadn't realised that both Peter Green and, do you say Danny Kirwan, had perfect pitch?
Yeah, according to Martin Clemens,
Yeah.
According to Martin Clements, they did. But so here's another question I want to throw at you. So, Danny Kirwan, on the verge of being something phenomenal, and developing some kind of state of mind, and just walking away from it, never picking up a guitar again. Well, this is after the other versions of Fleetwood Mac, but certainly,
yeah.
Why?
Well, there's lots of reasons, probably lots of reasons for that. I think that if you're 18 and you go from playing in a small pub in London, and then so I've got this guy. I wrote this down because I like this sort of thing. On August the 14th, 1968, he's playing at the Nag's Head. 10 days later, Battersea. 10 days later, he's on the stage at Hyde Park Free Concert in London.
Wow.
Playing on the same bill as Family, 10 years after Fairport Convention. 2 days later, he's at the BBC Radio Studios in London, recording session for 12 songs. 3 days after that, he begins a 50-date tour of the UK. The end of November, so what's that? That's yes, all right. 3 months later, he's in Paris, and then then he's in New York for a start of an almost sold-out tour, 30-date US tour, which concludes with performances at major venues like the Fillmore East and the Fillmore West, and appearing before 100,000 fans at a 3-day Miami Pop Festival in Florida with the Grateful Dead, Chuck Berry, Muddy Waters, B.B. King. Now, that's in like 4 or 5 months. You've gone from playing the Nag's Head, doing what I do, to playing, 100,000 people. Now,
so what's the venue of that first? What's the
pub?
It's 50
the
people?
Nag's Head. Well, probably Nag's Head, Blue Horizon Club in Battersea. Probably 50 people. 30 people, 50. Double figures kind of thing. And and then. I got to, it's that you move, within 5 months you're playing to 100,000 people. Well, when you're 18, you think what that does to an 18-year-old, and you can't stop it, I have a kind of completely dissimilar experience, but I understand it. When I grew up in rural Dorset, which is kind of south, and I went to a village primary school that had 27 people in it. And when I was 10 years old, we moved to Bristol. So within the space of a year, I went from a whole school that had 27 people in it. Then I went to a primary school in Bristol that had 33 people in a class. And within a year, I went to secondary school and they had 1,800 people.
Wow.
So within a year, I'd gone from 27 to 1,800 people. I can remember that first year at school and being quite overwhelmed. What, all these people? What, here? What, now? It's not the same, but I can imagine the same kind of feeling about, you go from that to that in the twinkling of an eye, and it's on a roller coaster. You just get on with it, it's kind of laid out for you. And all the hard work you've done, absolutely, not to putting that down at all. But, that 5 months where you go from that to 100,000 people and you're 18, that is something, and I guess one of the issues about that is, where do you go from that? What the only way's down, kind of thing.
I think, Simon, I think there's also the fact too that Led Zeppelin were lucky enough to have a very good manager.
Peter Grant, amazing,
to look after them. I think that's one of the faults that probably Fleetwood Mac had, is that they didn't have good management. They weren't being looked after when they were thrown onto this 100,000 stage audience. That they you need management to protect you.
Yeah, completely. Yeah, and well, I think you could say the same about most bands in the late '60s. That even the Beatles. If you take the Beatles, Brian Epstein really was on the edge, of being out of his depth most of the time. Managing the early Beatles. One feels, that, I mean, if you read it, obviously they were very successful, but I think that he, there was that kind of Liverpool record owners. It's like parochial view of a lot of things he did, that were quite amusing kind of thing, but of course nobody knew how to do it. Nobody understood how to do it, and I think that all those early '60s artists, particularly the management was, a bit harum scarum. I mean, even the Stones, with Andrew Loog Oldham, and it only kind of later on, the Who, with Kit Lambert and Chris Stamp, those guys, they're all learning how to do it. They're not really much older than the bands they're managing, and then you kind of get the sort of, you get to the late '60s and early '70s, and as you're right, Peter Grant, the great pioneer of, turning it all round, so, never mind you giving me 10%, Mr. Promoter, to employ you. You're going to give me 90%. Thank you very much. You're going to have 10. Hand it over. And so the band started to make money out of that. Now, I have no idea about where Fleetwood Mac were in that, but yeah, I mean, I agree. They don't seem to have, Vernon seems to have been something of a manager, but obviously I would suggest more of a record producer than a sort of manager like that. Not in that league at all. So I think, I think sort of, because Peter Green, he sort of managed Boiler House for a bit, didn't he? He sort of dabbled in managing Boiler, which is quite funny. I don't know if he was any good at it, but that kind of, I wonder how much they did themselves, and kind of trying to work out how it all works. What do you do when you've played 100,000 being you've got, I don't know, $5,000-$10,000, whatever it is, to play that sort of crowd. Somebody's got to deal with that money, haven't they? In a sensible manner. Our band's a good idea. I mean, it's you play in a pub, you share out the 50 quid you get. You play at that. You're sharing out the 5,000 quid in the dressing room afterwards.
Yeah. I certainly agree with you. I think that process, that quick process of playing in front of 50 people and then being thrust onto a stage and being celebrated, by your peers and by fans. If you're a delicate soul, a delicate person, it's going to have some kind of effect on you. And then obviously with Danny, certainly the alcohol was his drug of choice.
Choice, yeah.
And then you had Peter, loving it. I read recently he loved it because he felt like he was walking underwater.
Yeah. But the interesting part about that to me is that, alcohol is a very different drug to LSD.
Sure.
They're kind of, they're a part, if you, what I was saying earlier about bands that have, different drugs within them, and then it creates divisions because, the drugs affect those people in different ways. Alcohol is a very different drug to LSD, and but the experience of that is very different, isn't it? So I can imagine it makes you more aggressive and kind of, whereas LSD is more of kind of spiritual thing, stuff like that. It's you've got two oppositions there. I've had a few beers, I'm getting a bit bullshit because it's not going my way. I've had LSD, I'm
Yep.
a completely different kettle of fish in many ways. That, and I think that that can't be underestimated as well. In dividing bands and making them into factions and things like that. There's a the mighty.
You're right, because Danny threw bottles at Peter and argued with the band and smashed guitars, which certainly is behaviour that I've seen in people with alcohol issues, and
Indeed,
then
the anger,
Peter just probably just grinning and smiling, because he's
or following another planet.
Following another planet. But there's an interesting question in the chat, and we've spoken about this before. But I think we should answer it, Simon. Soda's asking, do you think all those English bands would have happened if they didn't live close to one another and have a healthy competitive camaraderie with each other? Look, Simon and I think we mentioned it the last show, Soda. Because England had a blues underground, and because they had the M1 and they had a circuit, that certainly helped spread the gospel and spread that competitiveness and that camaraderie that these people had. So it certainly did help flourish these bands in a creative way. That's my opinion.
I think you're right. I think it does help the fact that England's not very big. You can Newcastle is only 300 miles away from London, kind of thing. Yeah, about 300 miles. So you could drive there and back in it. Go and play a gig there and drive back again. I also think it is interesting that Page and Clapton and Beck were all born in a sort of very small area as well. But obviously, you are going to feel a kind of competitive edge to, Beck's doing that, is he? Need to get, and I'm sure that spurs people on in a good way, to be more creative and, get better at your instrument. Look what he's playing, bloody hell, I mean, the classic thing of, out of nowhere comes Jimi Hendrix, and then, Clapton's like, I'm giving up.
well, Martin Clemens in his book, he talks about how Peter purposely would put himself in a position where he would go up and ask Eric Clapton questions, and Eric Clapton would answer his questions. They would, they would stand there and talk. So he'd be asking him, I don't know. What scale are you doing?
What are you playing there? Yeah. Show me that lick. Yeah. Are you? Do you use the neck pickup? So and Eric is on record with sharing that information. So I think there's that. It is competitive, but there is also a camaraderie to it. We're all doing this together, and we've got to find our own way of doing stuff. And it's certainly true that they all had their own kind of different guitar sounds within what they were doing. Page had a very different guitar sound to Clapton, kind of thing. He didn't do that Clapton Brown sound thing. He had a much more kind of trebly sort of, cutting sort of thing, but not as kind of aggressive as Jeff Beck, Jeff Beck, the usual angry young man, I think, coming out through his playing kind of thing. But
I agree with you, Simon. I think Peter was a master, and he realized, okay, so I can't sound like this because I don't want to come off as a Clapton clone.
No. But that thing about they all pass through John Mayall's Blues Break, not all of them, but that kind of passing through Clapton and then on to Peter Green, in John Mayall's Blues Breakers. There must be a kind of because then Clapton is God had appeared around London kind of thing. And you're saying to yourself, well, you've got to follow somebody whose people have been spraying on the walls, Clapton is God, You've got to have some confidence about your own playing to be able to do that, haven't you? To go, I could do that.
What do you
stand aside?
What do you think about the story that it was Clapton's management who painted that Clapton as God?
I have no idea. I've never heard that before. I was entirely what do you think? An early form of graffiti by the actual management. That's
And
what you mean, John Mayall's management, the Blues Breakers management? Because I
yeah,
do take it he didn't have his own management there.
yeah. In this book,
Okay, yeah.
it was the record management, the record company. Apparently,
Right, okay, yeah.
we're responsible for.
Were they? Yes. How interesting, yeah. That's not completely unsurprising, of course. Yeah, yes. Who went around spraying things? Yes, I don't. Do you know where they sprayed it?
I wouldn't have a clue, but I love that. I
No,
love the
I
fact that
can't remember where they sprayed it.
there's a dog walking past, pissing on it.
They are, yeah, quite literally, yeah. I mean that kind of ironic thing, isn't it? Pissing on God kind of thing.
So was that in London?
I presume so. Yeah. I'm almost certainly in London because that's where they're all based, So, yeah, interesting, that competitive thing, and I think that it does, that competitive thing spurs people on, creatively. It becomes a kind of creative nexus. But London was like that in the 60s. If you think all those people and all those bands came out of London, the Stones, Clapton,
Phenomenal.
Beck, Page, Fleetwood Mac, right? On and on. And not the Beatles, of course, but those phenomenal bands, and that they must have met each other on the circuit, playing around, and you're going, he's bloody good. Oh, right, need to be on my mettle to kind of, to keep up with that kind of thing, and I'm sure that was the case, because they're all young men, of course, as well. The air of competitiveness in the young man world.
So I just want to do a shout out, Simon, because this is we've got Wednesday Store in the
Wednesday Store. Hello, Wednesday Store.
Also known as Dave. No, there's no Carl here today. His sister graduated with a law degree, so he's celebrating with his family today. So you just got Simon and I, guys. But I did do a shout out earlier to you, Wednesday Store, early in the show, talking about your theory of these British blues cats having an obsessive compulsive disorder when it comes to guitars.
Oh, which is interesting, yeah. Wednesday Store it is interesting that compulsive behaviour to put aside everything else and play your guitar, just play and play and play to kind of to get better, and that slightly interesting fact, getting a record player and going over licks, going over song, going back and forth, playing it at different speeds and stuff, slowing it down to 33. Or if it's a 45, or slowing it down to 16 if it's an LP, to kind of try and work out what people were playing and stuff. That's a certain amount of compulsive. It's not for the quick, the flitty-minded amongst us, is it?
Well, no, because again,
not by some distance.
We're all familiar with the story of Eric Clapton, listening and taping, and then rewinding the tape, and then playing himself. Doing this when he was 16 years old, out in the park, and I'm going, my gosh, for hours, and then playing the version, Big Bull Broomsney or
whoever,
and playing it, and then playing it live, and getting whoever's listening say, does it sound the same? And people were going, holy shit, it does.
Playing Hideaway by Freddie King, yes, a lot till you can play it out completely. It's but that is, you're right, that does, it all encompassing and all kind of all engrossing kind of hobby and thing that I don't know whether I think that it's that to some extent if you think about my children can play, it's not the same thing, but they can play games and stuff for hours. You could and I don't know if it's the same thing, but that kind of could be described as compulsive, could be described as just what you've got at your disposal that means that, you know, some sort of, you know, you do something, you do it for hours, you know, and you know, some people get caught up in that obsessive, you know, and they get good at it, you know, really good at it. And I think that probably applies to, you know, lots of things, not just music, but, you know, those people who are the best, you know, sport is another thing, you know, who can compulsively spend hours, I don't know, you know, practicing your free kicks or practicing, you know, practicing a golf swing, or you you must have seen those pictures of Tiger Woods aged 5, you know, doing a golf swing, stuff like that. You know, there must be a compulsive drive in all of that.
Well, most of us are all guitar players here, and I play every day, Simon. If I'm not playing, I play every day, and I make sure I get time to play, because it has an effect on me if I don't.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And I'd be interested if the guys in the chat, you know, do they play? Do you guys play every day? I don't do. Well, I've got a few other things that I should be doing, but
and we all, yes.
but I certainly make sure, Simon, that. What about you? Do you play every day?
I play every day. I have interestingly, I have 4 electric guitars, but I have one that's out all the time. Yeah, most of them are in cases.
Yep.
But I have one that's out. Normally, that Black Chapman I've got, that actually I play more than any other guitar. It's you know, I'd actually like it. I actually really like that guitar. It's funny, £200 guitar. You know, done some little mods to it, and yet actually, I really like it as a guitar. I gig with it as well. But yeah, if I'm just wandering about, I strap it on while I'm making tea. You know, if I've got 10 minutes, I'll strap it on and kind of, you know, noodle about a bit and kind of it. I think the difference is that, lucky you, Mr. Flowers. Todd says I play every day, 2 hours. I'm retired. Yes, not yet for me. I've got young children. Damn. But that actually my practicing and my playing it, because I'm old and too many distractions, is not very focused. That's the difference, I think. Is that, you know, I don't obsessively sit down and work out what in God's name people are playing, because I don't have the time.
Yeah.
You know, so I
have to be doing
sometimes.
Yeah. I have to have my guitar, Simon, and and be doing something at least for certainly for 20-30 minutes.
Yeah.
But like Todd's saying, it's not uncommon for me to be locked away for 2 hours.
Yeah. So I mean, Todd has made a very good point. Like Larry Bird shooting 3-pointers for hours. You know, it's it's the 10,000 hours argument. You know, people who've done, there's that kind of sports argument, isn't there? The people who've done 10,000 hours of, you know, practicing their sport or their musical instrument or something when they're young will be the best at it, kind of thing, because they because that's where they are and that's what they've done. And those formative years have been taken up with this kind of obsessive practicing and stuff like that. But yeah, I think, as I say, going back to my, you know, I play every day, but it doesn't have a focus, because I'm old and unfocused. But it doesn't have a focus that those guys obviously had. But, you know, as you say, Clapton taping himself and then playing the original and saying, does that sound anything like that? You know, does that sound like Hideaway? You know, well, no, not yet. You've got to, you know, blimey, you got to keep doing, and you know, and that. But then you get, from that obsessive copying, you get a kind of, you have to then work out, what's my sound? You know, never mind sounding just like Freddie King. What's my sound? What do I do? Which I think is what the kind of the Beano album is about, isn't it? You know, Eric Fine, he's got a Les Paul, he's got a 50-watt blues breaker, and he's cranked it up, you know, and he's like, oh, right, okay, yes, here's a sound, you know, and it's going to be mine.
What's really interesting, Simon, in this book here, the British Blues Network, the author, and it's not a new theory It's not a new story. But these British blues guys all believed that they had something that was real. The music that they were listening to was the reality of their own lives. There was something that was that was historic, something that was relevant, spiritual, if you want, that they were listening to, that they wanted. And Keith Richards talks about it too. They almost became missionaries of getting this music out to people.
Yeah, that's yes, absolutely. Yeah. It's a zealot. It's the zealots. You become a zealot, and kind of spreading the word about this music that they've discovered, and that kind of turning it around, and then then ultimately, of course, taking it back to America. So, and kind of rediscovering getting America to rediscover its own blues roots, by getting all those people out, I mean, I was talking about earlier about Danny Kirwan, playing with 100,000 fans in Florida. He's playing with Chuck Berry, Muddy Waters, and BB King.
He would have been floored because he's a fan of them.
Yeah, completely. Yeah. And 5 months ago, he was playing in a pub in Nag's Head, not meeting BB King and Chuck Berry and stuff. But and then 5 months later, he's meeting them. He's meeting probably some of his heroes. It's a great. Muddy Waters and BB King, the great blues artists, and kind of on their way back up, for having been rediscovered by and reinvigorated by English blues players.
Cheers, Todd. See you later, Soda.
Good night, Todd. Take care.
There's another question I want to ask you, and I was looking forward to asking Carl this question, and I spoke to him about this personally a couple of years ago. When I was reading this book here by Gould about the Beatles, it's interesting. He mentioned that the Dirty Mac and Get Your Blues. Was a put down, was an insult, was a dig at this British blues Fleetwood Mac phenomena that was happening because because John Lennon didn't think that they were being authentic.
That argument, the authentic argument.
Yeah.
Can white men sing the blues kind of argument? Yeah. I mean, yes, that's quite interesting, because I suppose you could say that the Beatles are more of a product of rock and roll than of blues.
Absolutely,
that's fair to say.
Argument.
Their early stuff is all about rock and roll, rather not that they don't come from the same place, but that different branch, that kind of, and obviously, in fairness, that rock and roll thing had as many white people do as it did black people.
Yep.
If you think about Buddy Holly, Eddie Cochran, Elvis, as well as Chuck Berry, Little Richard,
Haley.
Yes, absolutely. The sort of the arch starter, Bill Haley, a man who went mad in his last years and died in his garage, lived in his garage the last few years of his life. It's a lesson for us all. But so I can see that Lennon might think that people trying to play authentic blues, Chicago blues, that was different to what they were doing, and I mean, Lennon, what Lennon's like. He's a spiky dude,
Oh, absolutely. That's why we love.
It's kind of like clap your hands, and the people in the posh seats shake your jewelry. It's the same sort of thing, isn't it? It's having a if there was a man who was competitive, it's John Lennon. Competitive, of course, and from the provinces. Let's not forget the sort of rolling. I come from Liverpool, so therefore I come from the north. And I don't know if you know this, but in England, there's still this week there is talk of the north-south divide, and that somehow all the wealth and all the knowledge and all the art is somehow in the south. So I think we can't take out of that the kind of northern bloke with a chip on his shoulder kind of thing, which, you know, has been prevalent for forever in that, you know, the sort of that antagonism between people who live in the north and people who live in the south.
The irony is, though, that your blues and that version that they do on the Rock and Roll Circus is bloody good.
Bloody good. Yeah. Doesn't have Eric Clapton on it as well?
Yeah, Clapton.
Well done, yes.
Richard's playing bass. It's pretty good. It's not bad.
Yeah. You know, it's just, I don't know. You know, you kind of feel with that, you know, later period Lennon, that, you know, there's anger in there. There's a lot of, you know, stuff going on with him, like a lot of other people, you know, and kind of, you know, and that's where it comes out, you know, kind of thing. I mean, you know, him and Paul McCartney having digs at each other in their solo songs, didn't they? I can't remember what the John Lennon song is. They're having a tremendous swipe at Paul. You know, he's not averse to having a swipe, is Mr. Lennon, by some distance.
Yeah. He didn't like Obla Di Obla Da. He called that Paul's little ditty, Grandma's ditty or Nana ditty or something.
Yeah.
You know,
see, the idealism of youth, Andrew. You see, yeah, lucky him. You know, I mean, I talk about, you know, that lovely kind of idealism of youth. You know, I was just thinking what I'd done this year. I was talking to somebody and they were saying, you know, what do you do? You know, what do you play? And it came to me like, actually, what have you got? You know, because actually this year I've done, for my kids' theatre group, I've done Kids from Fame. You know, remember the 80s TV series Fame?
Yep.
So I've played the musical show of that. 4 weeks later, I've done Joseph and His Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat whilst doing my band. Because when you get to my age, if somebody comes along and says, do you fancy playing this? You know, that kind of like my early 20s kind of idealism is like, certainly not. I wouldn't be see dead playing that. It's like, yeah, whatever. You know, what do you want me to do? You know, you just turn up and play because it's part of an education, really. But yes, I have no idealism about it. You know, Williams, you're a guitar player. Go out and play the guitar. And when somebody asks you, say yes and get on with it, you know.
I was lucky enough to go to a jam on Sunday afternoon with about 3 or 4 guys, and there was 2 guys there, a guy called Tony, who's a bass player, and another guy called Rick. And you know, you mentioned it earlier before. You know, we'd never played with these guys, so we just, you know, knew a couple of songs. Everybody knew at least the gist of the songs, you know.
Yep.
Sympathy for the Devil was one song that we played, and you know, it sounded really good and it was great, you know, looking at a guy and nodding and having a smile because you're just playing the rhythm and he's doing some bloody good licks.
Yeah. God, we used to play Sympathy for the Devil. I remember brilliantly we had a father and son drumming duo. They were both drummers, the father and the son. We played in a club, and the son played drums, and the father, Mike Pick, he played percussion and stuff like that. It was tremendous. The hilarious thing about Mike Pick was that he played his drums left-handed, right? Although he's not left-handed. And we said to him, so why do you play your drums left-handed, Mike? He said, well, when I was a kid, I used to set them up the same way as they were on the television and then play. Oh. So, of course, he's mirror-imaged. So he didn't think about the fact they were mirror-imaged. He just set them up so they were the same way around as they were on the television. And then he just learned to play like that, which, of course, is left-handed, isn't it? Because it's the mirror imaging. So, yeah, that's the reason he played drums like that, which is very funny. Michael Smith, good morning. How you doing? Hope you're good.
Yeah. I you know, I loved it.
Funny.
We did a couple of Beatles songs and, you know, the usual blues riffs. It was fantastic. And
did you sing, Andrew? Do you sing?
Yeah.
Well, so you know words and stuff. I always think that's really one of the most important things is who's going to sing the song, because the singer gives the song a structure.
Yeah, I'm not frightened. I'm not frightened to get in there, but I prefer you know, adding some harmonies. You know, we did we did Paperback Writer, which is pretty easy to play. but it's great to sing, and it was just great because it's a song that everybody knows,
And it's got the two-part harmonies.
And you get the harmonies were great.
Yeah.
Not even rehearsed.
No, but you know what to do because everyone, you know it, you know when to sing. And oh yeah, absolutely, yeah. As a man who plays in a duo, I know all about harmony singing, and that sort of thing is really cool. You know, as you say, when you're 20, you just want to shout. When you're 60, you want to sing and you want to make the two-part harmonies, and you're working out. I like all of that a lot. Doing all of those things, it's a lot of fun. But I mean, yes. Bringing it back to our conversation, it's about Fleetwood Mac. I mean, again, harmony singing. Three-part harmony singing. 3 singers, 3 guitar players. So you've got harmonic guitars and harmonic singing. And if they both got 2 of them got perfect pitch, you're you're going to do well, aren't you? Yeah. And they play differently. I don't know. The other really interesting that struck me about Fleetwood Mac is that their singles, their famous singles, starting with Black Magic Woman, in Albatross and Man of the World, and they're like, oh well, and you think they're seemingly a world away from. Certainly their early album, the first couple of albums are mainly just blues albums. You go, well, where the hell does that come from? How just in these singles, some of them didn't even appear on the albums, did they? And so I was fascinated by that as to where those things came from. I don't know. So it's like, how do you get to there from there? I'm always interested by that. What inspired, for instance, Albatross? That very slow kind of ding, 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 ding. Just 2 chords kind of thing. Where does that come from? I don't know if you know. Do you know where it comes from? There's some fantastic things about this that I sort of discovered. It's that are worth going to listen to. If you go and listen to a Chuck Berry song called "Deep Feeling," right? You go and listen to that, then tell me. You go, good Lord, so it is. I mean, it really is. I don't know. Shall I find it?
They ripped off Chuck Berry.
Well, they took that basic kind of that kind of Hawaiian guitar thing that he did, and kind of when you hear it, you go, oh yeah, there's another song by the 50s group called Santo and Johnny, which is kind of Hawaiian guitar. He plays Hawaiian guitar, which has certain similarities about it as well. But yeah, and then you go, oh yeah, Chuck Berry. Oh yeah, they played with Chuck Berry, and and obviously they delved into his catalogue because I'd never heard of an instrumental by him called Deep Feeling. I don't know if you have.
No.
I'm quite familiar with Chuck, but not that familiar with him. That's for sure. But it's kind of amazing, that kind of thing. That where you got it from, and what you then did to take that to a new place. It's that thing about reinventing stuff. That I find really interesting. And taking those kind of 50s things and stuff, and kind of just going round them again and saying, oh yeah. The other song.
That's what Carl was saying last week. The Americans were saying, you've got these great singles. Where's the albums?
Yeah, which is very weird, isn't it? It's
what's the other song?
The other song is Sun King by the Beatles.
Yeah.
You listen to that and you go, oh yeah. Sometimes there's things you go, I'm not sure if I hear that very much, but
I read that Sun King was inspired by Fleetwood Mac in the first place.
Might have been. It's possible that, I don't know. Although it's 69. When's Albatross? Albatross is later than that, isn't it? 70. 69? 68. Is it 68? Yeah. Oh, well, maybe it inspired the Beatles song. Maybe the Beatles, it's a bit like, it's other way around.
Yeah, that Sun King's phenomenal.
Yeah, but it is quite like it, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Hilariously quite like it, which personally I think is great. But I hate iPhones.
You go to your iPhone, and I'm just going to look through this here and see what they say here.
Yeah, I love all those kind of quotes and things that inspired other things. It's like something that the Rain song by Led Zeppelin. The first two chords are something by the Beatles. Which I think is great. And that kind of quoting, conscious quoting of things is really good fun. But yeah, I mean, finding out where those things are, because obviously, Albatross is not, it's not like Dust My Brew, is it? I feel there's a big distance between that and, that and, it's pretty, not gonna Come on, wake up. We are working.
There's something. Hold on. Across the universe. I just want to see what this is.
Yeah.
This has to say about it, because
right, while you're doing that, I'll just play a little section of this. Listen.
Cool.
See what I mean?
Yeah.
I won't play any more of it, but you can investigate that. But you see what I mean? It is, you think, oh yeah,
So that's Chuck.
So it is. That's Chuck Berry. That's a song called Deep Feeling from 1957. Really? Yeah, that's Chuck. You think, well, those first bits, you go, bloody hell, Albatross, don't you?
Yeah. Phenomenal.
Yeah, which is tremendous fun in my books. There's but yes, and because I don't know that song at all, as I say, and just hearing it and going, I mean, I've heard some sort of Chuck Berry. Now, when you hear it, you go, oh yeah, Chuck Berry, and it does fit in, and all of a sudden that you can feel the line between Chuck Berry and Albatross, which I'd never really kind of figured out before. Never could figure out really what its antecedents were in that. It was kind of and obviously Danny Kirwan's first contribution to Fleetwood Mac, played the other guitar on Albatross.
Yeah. What an introduction.
Well, indeed, yes. It's a fantastic kind of sort of way of doing it. But yeah, what are you looking at? And yes, it's worth looking up. They're listening to Sun King by the Beatles as well, because you can definitely feel the same sort of lineage in there.
So Arvin's saying, wasn't Satisfaction from Nowhere to Run, Nowhere to Hide 60s soul tune, the riff anyway? I have heard that.
I know, yes, Wednesday Store. Hardly ever been known before, is it? Led Zeppelin quoting other songs.
Yeah.
Well, my favourite one of those is the intro to Rock and Roll. Remember, I played that to you a few weeks ago.
That's correct.
Which is Little Richard.
That's correct.
Which is fantastic, and completely, I'd never picked that up before, and I've heard that record before, But yes, to hear it, you think, oh yeah, so it is again. Ting.
Another one they pinched.
Yeah. And they've since had to atone from their sins in many ways, haven't they? Led Zeppelin, by putting the real Willie Dixon on quite a lot of their songs. Credits.
Yeah.
By the way, guys, you've got to behave yourself, please, to pay the money to the people who did it. Although, I've said this before, in their defence, that's what all those blues guys were doing, for God's sake. Recycling, reinventing, redoing other people's songs. So I don't.
Yeah.
I don't feel as though it was tremendously disgraceful thing to be doing, really. You know.
No, I'm not going to kick them in the nuts too much for it. But what one thing though that will always have my respect was the fact that Clapton and Keith, right from the word go, Simon, gave credit where credit was due. They didn't say anything that they were writing was their own.
No.
They gave it right back, saying, you know, there's
At the
interviews
time.
with Keith Richards saying, go and listen to these guys yourselves.
Yeah. No, completely, yes. And I think probably the Stones are slightly more honourable about it than maybe Led Zeppelin. But yeah, as I say, one hesitates because all those blues guys are recycling all that stuff for their own. What was one song to one person. Change a word in the title becomes another song for somebody else and stuff. And they're all claiming songwriting rights for them and all of those things. So I feel like it's just part of music in general. And we see tremendous examples of it, quoting from other people's stuff, taking inspiration from other things, changing things around, doing stuff which I think is one of the great joys, isn't it, of spotting the quotes from various things in other things. For me, that's the minutiae is very exciting, really, in many ways from that. But yeah, it amazes me that sort of doing Albatross and stuff like that, and doing Man of the World and things. Man of the World. My favorite. Do you remember the B side of Man of the World is something called Somebody's Going to Get Their Head Kicked In Tonight? Do you know that? The reason I know it is because it was covered by a punk band called the Rosillos.
Never heard of them.
They were a Scottish band. They had a hit. But they on their album Can't Stand the Rosillos. So go and check out the. It's sort of I love that sort of thing as well. It's kind of like the obscure B-sides and stuff taken on by other bands. Yeah, so even punk bands were doing Fleetwood Mac. 10 years later, kind of thing. Yeah, so it's worth having a look at the Rosillos, Fay Ray, and the Rosillos. Yeah, Rezillos.
I'll have to check them out, Simon.
Yeah, they're a Scottish band. What's he called? Eugene. I can't remember the singer's name. Fay Ray, and they're kind of dressed up in kind of 50s kind of sort of spacey outfits. They look like came from quite it's kind of wraparound shades kind of stuff. Quite sort of punky, but it's the 50s. So they were fun. They had a song called Top of the Pops. Everybody's on Top of the Pops. So and they were on Top of the Pops doing Top of the Pops. It's which is very cool. It's nice kind of booking that. So that's worth checking out. The other thing I discovered is that and of course makes sense as soon as I say it, and I hadn't realised it, is that particularly Albatross, David Gilmour. See, as soon as you say it, you think, oh God, yes, David Gilmour, he's acknowledged it. I had a look, he's acknowledged absolutely one of, that kind of slow, playing very David Gilmour. So David Gilmour, obviously, that was a big influence on him and his playing. When you say it, you go, oh yeah. When, before you say it, you don't, you hadn't made the connection between the two things at all, which I think was interesting. That's it. Wednesday Store is saying, biggest rock and roll swindle in history. I heard Led Zeppelin sold their entire back catalogue to the record company before the copy stuff came to light. I don't know about that. Question? I thought they still had control of it, to be honest. I thought Jimmy Page still had control of all the Zeppelin stuff. I think they just had to put various people's names on them, like Dixon W, to acknowledge where these things had come from.
He became a multi-millionaire his estate became a multi-millionaire.
Well, yeah. I presume lots of money have gone his way. Yes, he's not alive anymore, Willie Dixon, is he?
No.
sadly, yeah.
But
Hopefully
the
it came
estate
from
would have been going like this.
yeah, his sons and his cousins and his aunts rubbing their hands together with glee.
Yep.
Like Led Zeppelin money rolling in. I bet it wasn't backdated though, was it? Not by much, anyway. No, but yes, I mean, I find that really interesting. That the kind of the singles part of Fleetwood Mac seemingly is different, a different different kind of thing, and where they experimented and where they really wanted to change and really wanted to sort of get to grips with different things, different genres, and taking the music somewhere else. Seemingly more than I don't know if this is fair. Seemingly more than actually on their albums, in a funny kind of way.
It's a shame. It's a shame it ended so quickly, because them Play On gave us a glimpse of something that was amazing. And then you listen to their live albums, the Boston Tea Party and that Shrine 60, 69, and the tone, their live tone, Simon's phenomenal. Not bad for guys that were just plugging their guitars into amps.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to play this too. See if you can. Do you know what that is?
That's Oh Well.
Yeah, but except it's not. It's called "It's Beating Around the Bush" by AC/DC.
Yeah.
Just a little.
Sounds like Oh Well to me.
Well, it's completely Oh Well. Yeah, just played a bit faster. just in case you thought that probably a tribute. Shall we say it's a tribute?
Yeah.
to the mighty Peter Green. I think that's probably fair enough, really. As I say, I love all of those things. Kind of a kind of that kind of quoting and that kind of, yes, we'll take this riff and we'll speed it up, change it a little bit. And there, bingo, we've got ourselves a song, of our own. Yeah. So still going on,
Still going on.
That's from '79, that AC/DC song. So, but it's it's just it's Oh Well, just speeded up a bit. As a kind of as a kind of thing, really. I mean, yes, Oh Well, sort of first kind of it's a proto heavy rock sort of single as well, wasn't it? As well, again moving things forward, different genre, moving their musical horizons forward, and kind of in an interesting manner.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Carl say last week that Green Manalishi, some people say that Green Manalishi was the foundation for metal music.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, one of their foundations. Make up. I think that's probably along with Led Zeppelin and stuff like that, and I always think really the foundation is Black Sabbath. Really, their first album is that song Black Sabbath is really where it comes from.
That's it.
But I think in these guys' terms, it's a sound thing, isn't it? I've got a different sound. I've cranked it up. I've given it some. Cranked up what I've got. And I'm playing a Gibson through a Marshall, or whatever. And I'm getting that crunchy, kind of distorted sound, and that's kind of like, oh, right, okay, yeah, I like that as a sound. What can we do with that kind of thing? And playing those single note riffs obviously gives them a breadth and a depth that playing through very clean Fender amps with Fender Stratocasters, a la like the Shadows, is not really the same thing, is it? They probably come from quite a lot from that, but they're you've got a different sound, and I think that in the late '60s, it's all about the soundscape. Your experimentation with sound, what you can get out of instruments in a way that nobody else is doing, or people are doing it different ways and stuff like that. And yes, and I think it's the beginning of that of that sort of sound. What about sound? The sound that we use, the sound of and experimentation and expanding the sounds you can get out of a guitar. By doing other things with it.
Yeah.
Stuff like that, which is yeah, Then obviously you go on to the 70s where people experimented a lot more with, I mean, it's the same with Jimmy Page and his bow, that kind of thing, so it's just a sound experimentation, using a theremin, all those things. They're about experimenting with sound, things I can do to my instrument to make them sound different.
Sure.
Get a new sound out of it, which I think is, and obviously Fleetwood Mac, in the forefront of that, whereas you've got Green Manalishi, it's quite a heavy sound and stuff like that. Obviously, somebody got that sound, Peter Green got that sound. I thought, well, that's a good sound, we'll use it, kind of thing. So I think, yeah, it's that's interesting, and I love all of that kind of, that ferment of experimentation in the late 60s that everybody was doing, Syd Barrett, everybody was, how can I get new sounds, different sounds out of my guitar?
Yep.
Out of the same instrument, many different people with many different ideas, and doing many different things. I think it's admirable, that sort of thing, that that they were doing that, and that kind of spirit of experimentation. I think it happens. I mean, I think it's still going on. People like Radiohead and stuff like that. Johnny Greenwood is a great experimenter of, soundscapes and using the guitar to do other things rather than just play simple chords and things. So, but I think that goes back to people like Peter Green, who wanted to expand the soundscape of what he was doing, and those singles that they did, as I say, I think are tremendous examples of stretching out, doing different things, different sounds, different melodies, different way of although as we see with Albatross going back to Chuck Berry, but it's kind of twisting it into a new thing completely, turning it into sort of slow, really like melodic, playing stuff, which I think is really interesting myself, and lays the foundation for what a lot of other people were doing. You could take one of those ideas, the Green Manalishi, sound, if you like, and make a whole genre of music out of it.
Yeah.
Which is always what happens. Somebody has one good idea, uses it once, and somebody else takes that idea and makes a whole kind of a whole genre out of it, which I think is really interesting.
Awesome, Simon. Hey, I appreciate you jumping on board, and I think you've got some people to get ready.
Yeah. Got to go and wake up the hooligans and get them started for school, and get myself to work. Going into work today.
Are you going
Scary.
into it? Okay.
Yeah. I don't normally go in on a Monday, but I do go in on a Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. So meet various people.
Appreciate you taking the time to join us, and it's sad that Carl can't be here, but he's doing something that's good, celebrating some good
Important.
news. So.
Yeah.
But as usual, Simon, you've given us some interesting connections. The archaeologist, I'm going to call you.
I like the minutiae of it. The broad stuff is fine, but it's actually to me the fun bits of the minutiae. The little nuggets of information.
I think that's the great thing about what we're trying to achieve is trying to build those connections and share the experiences of that we have as fans with each other, and always cool hanging out with the cats in the chat.
Yeah. Thanks to Arvin, Wednesday Store, Todd Flowers.
Yeah.
Take care. And who else? We've got Michael Smith. Thanks for dropping in, Michael. Very cool.
Yeah, always good to see. Always good to see the usual guys jumping in. So we should be doing a show next week, and it's just about Christmas, Jeepers. So we probably won't be doing one during the Christmas week. But Arvin, Todd, Soda, always good to see
Soda
you
Pop.
guys.
Yeah.
Always good to see you. So
cool.
We'll catch you guys next week.
Another early morning. Hopefully Carl's back. The professor is back.